This is video 6 of Lovemaking versus Sex. And I want us to think about what the Song of Songs chapter 4 to chapter 5 verse 2 talks about. And I want you to read it and take the time to read it. And what you'll see is it is the wedding night, and most scholars agree, the wedding night between a groom and the bride. Not a husband and wife, though they were just husband and wife, but between a group, my sister, my bride, he calls her, not because he's being incestuous, but he's realizing this is a daughter of God, and it is her lover, her husband, so the groom on the wedding night. And what's profound is there's a picture there that takes us back to Genesis 2, 24 and 25. Actually, Genesis 2, 24, 23 to 25, where we see that Adam goes, this is bone of my bone, flesh of my flesh. That God designs the woman from the man, takes a rib out of him, designs him. God brings him to the man. There's an exclusivity and a dignity. And he goes, this is bone of my bone and flesh of my flesh. And the summary was, therefore, and a command, therefore shall a man leave his father and mother and hold fast to his wife, and the two will become one flesh. And the man and his wife were both naked, and they felt no shame. They were not ashamed. Let's stop and think about that, about nakedness. In the Song of Songs, chapter 4 to chapter 5, verse 2, there's no doubt they're naked. In fact, he describes his wife, his bride, that night from head to toe in the first 11, 12 verses. And then she invites him to herself. That's key. They were both naked and felt no shame. So even though sin has come into marriage, it has come into the world, the very first institution that was plagued by sin was marriage. Lovemaking on the wedding night for the first time, and sex for the first time, exclusivity for the first time on the wedding night should be something beautiful. So just stop and think about what nakedness means for a moment. Even stop the video and think of that. Talk to one another. What does it mean to be naked? Well, if you've discussed that, you'll realize to be naked is something profound. And anybody can go on TikTok and show themselves off, which is very popular today, or models will show themselves off, or how much skin can you show. But to be an exclusive relationship in marriage, and as he talks to her, a locked garden, a sealed fountain, to be that exclusive between a man and a woman on their wedding night, now that's something. Because nakedness describes what? Vulnerability. To be exposed, to be real. And if you're real spiritually, if you're real in the way you think, if you're honest and open with one another, then there's an exclusivity. That's why flirtation, that's why seeking to have an affair doesn't work. Because I've got to have that in the exclusivity for lifelong. For lifelong. If the Lord allows you to live, 10, 20, 30, 40 years in marriage, that should always be that way. Marriage should be honored above all things, and the marriage bed kept pure, Hebrews 13:4 says. And they were naked. Think of it. There was no need to hide. There was no need to mock the other. There was no need to compare, no need to avoid, no need to blame or be fragmented. There was no betrayal. There was no need to feel dismissed or invalidated. There was an exclusivity between a husband and a wife. Now, why is that important? Because it was God's design. He said in Genesis 2:18, it is not good that a man is alone. I will make, God, it was God's idea, not Adam's idea, not Eve's idea. I will make a helper fit for him. Think of that for a moment. The word helper is the word Ezer in the Hebrew. It's used actually of God a number of 40 times in the Bible. A helper, one who is a complementary counterpart, one who corresponds with Adam, and not only with him, to him. So they partner together. There's an exclusivity. So God designed strategic servant leaders who own their position under God, uniquely designed in these roles towards one another, so they listen to one another, learn from one another, love from one another. And how do they do this? exposed, vulnerable. That is absolutely quite beautiful. And the man and his wife were naked, and they felt no shame. Just grasp that. The impact of what that means for your marriage, for my marriage. That we can be before one another and be real. And remember, this is more than just, as I said before, a penis and a vagina, but this is still key. There's a complementary counterpart. You need a penis and a vagina to connect, but it's more than just, no. And it's more than just, by the way, procreation. It's a counterpart to connect, to click, to fit in perfectly for pleasure, not just procreation. Though procreation is critical because our children become the first disciples. But it's a connection. Think it as Christ and the church. Husbands have a selfless, strategic, sensitive, sacrificial love to your wives. Wives, align yourself up with your husbands as unto the Lord. Husbands, love your wives as Christ did the church. It's a beautiful complementary counterpart between a husband and a wife. They were naked and they felt no shame. Just ponder that. Think that through, what it means to be exposed and to be that vulnerable. So it wasn't rushed. There was no haste. There was an admiration. There was time. There was reflection. And may God help us to go back to being naked and unashamed. Bless you.